In our previous video, we looked at an overview of Apache CXF, which is an open source services framework. And if you go into cxf.apache.org, you will see the overview section, and you'll also see the latest download for Apache CXF version 4.10, released on December 13, 2024. It's fairly new. And in this video, we will look at how to use Apache CXF to build a SOAP web service, and we'll consume it using the SOAPUI tool. For this video, obviously you need to have Apache CXF downloaded, you need to have SOAPUI downloaded, you also need to have Tomcat installed, that is also available. Tomcat version 11 is what I'm using here, so make sure that you have it downloaded. You should have Maven, Apache Maven installed to build the Java project, CXF project that we are going to implement. That is also needed. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And so to see, I will also would like to ask you to have this CXF uh, a page, like GitHub page that lists the samples. And there are plenty of samples here that covers everything from basic to complex use cases that you can cover with CXF. And so I'm basically trying to do this Java first JAX-WS and Java first JAX-WS factory bean. This is what I'm going to explain to you, building and how to build it from scratch and so forth. So there are two ways to build a web service using CXF. And in general, this is applicable for other frameworks as well, any other web services framework. You can use the code first approach or the contract first approach. The code first approach will look into a code, like you will have a Java code, you will have a set of Java classes, and you will have a set of interfaces that you want to expose as a web service. And there are various ways to do that thing. And so that is normally called a code first approach. A contract first approach is you don't start with code right away, but rather you will have a WSDL file, something like this. Um, you will have a WSDL file. If you go into one of this, you might be able to see a WSDL file somewhere. Uh, I can't see it here, but anyhow, you will be able to see a WSDL file, and you will generate a set of classes and interfaces using a tool. And here in CXF world, that tool is called, WSDL to Java tool, and you will use that tool to generate those class files and interface files. Those are like boilerplate code. And then after, the process is the same. You will start implementing. You will not create all these um, well you will not create all these boilerplate code from scratch. But I think it's good to know how to build that thing. So code first approach will teach you all of that. So because of that, I'll be using code first approach here. Okay, so let's get started. For this, you will also need the Eclipse IDE. You can use any other IDE, or you can even use VS Code, which is fine, but this will make things a little easier. And before we dive into, you need to have some, for example, if I just go into bash rc of my uh, machine, you need to have Java home, and in my case, I'm using Java JDK 19, so you need to have that installed. You can also use Java 21 if you want to. You need to have Maven and set this export, Maven home, and that is also added. The bin directory of that is added to the path as well, and the bin directory of your Java is also added. And I have Ant installed, even though I'm not using Ant in this demonstration. You can add the bin directory of that. And CXF home is your download. Now, I mentioned CXF latest version is 4.10, so I have downloaded and I have extracted that in my programs directory, and I have added the bin directory of that as well. Even though I'm not going to use much in any of the tools like WSDL to Java that I mentioned from CXF home, but it's always a good practice to have it in your path as well. Right, having said that, we can now go into our Eclipse directory, and you can start off with creating a Maven project. This is why you need Maven, and I'm going to create a simple project. Skip archetype selection. So archetypes are a set of templates that you can start off from without having to write anything from scratch. But we'll go from scratch. So I'm going to say org um, org cxf dot hello dot server. So we are going to create a web service. So I'll call it the web server, and I'm going to call this Apache CXF hello world. Okay, and if you want to, you can change this, or you can leave it as is. So I'll just leave it. And because we're going to do the deployment in WAR file, like in the Tomcat web archive file, I'll select WAR files. But CXF also supports multiple. It doesn't depend on Tomcat as a servlet container, right? But you can do the deployment of this WAR file into Tomcat. You can also use any other uh, deployments as well. If you go into the CXF web page, you will be able to see these details. For example, if you go into user guide, um, you'll be able to see deployment. It supports various different application servers. It supports JBoss application server, WebLogic, Spring Boot type, WebSphere, and so forth. And Tomcat is easier to do, even though I couldn't find some documentation details, specific documentation details here in this page. However, there have been some other pages, scattered around, which uh, made me a little difficult on getting things to work because of the latest version of Tomcat, and most documentation seem to be applicable for older version of Tomcat. However, we will cover those things here. So because of that, I will be choosing WAR file, but we will later in the video, we will also see how to use jar files and create a standalone web service without having to depend on Tomcat or any other. Obviously, you need to have a web server inbuilt, embedded, but it will not be dependent on a separate servlet container running elsewhere, so that you bring a WAR file and deploy it there. So we will just run the jar file and it will work. And that's the second part of the video. Okay, so we'll use this one for now and click OK. Right, so we are using the code first approach, right? So we don't have any packages, so I need to create a code. So first of all, we will try to create a new package, and obviously this package I will call it org.cxf dot hello.server, something like this. You can use any other package name, that's okay. But once you have it, you will have the package created, and then you can start creating your interfaces. Initially, an interface is something that you can define as uh, a blueprint, or sort of a you know a view for clients to look at, and what are the operations and uh, you know things available in the implementation. And however, this is not a must, it's a good practice to do so. So I will call it hello world, right? Hello world interface. And once you have, the interface will be created, and in my interface I will have three methods and one returning string, and say hello world. And that's one method. And another method saying, let's say hello, but this time around passing a name inside. And this will say hello world, this will say whatever hello name. And then let's also have another method saying, say hello user, but not passing a string, but an object called user, uh, and we'll get the name from there. Now we obviously we don't have the user, so we need to create that. So let's create the user uh, class, and in the user class we are going to have these methods. So it has a name field and user constructor, empty constructor, and a getter and a setter. So very simple. And now we shouldn't have that issue. And obviously, then we need to have the implementation of this. So we'll have that implementation class created. So we'll call it Hello World implementation class. And uh, choose. I'm going to use this interface. So it implements this. Now we need to implement the methods, right? So here in this case, I'm going to do println, will say hello world. All you don't need this. Obviously, in a real world scenario, you will have uh, a log into a file or somewhere, and we're going to return hello world string, right? And in the other case, I'm going to bring up this. We'll have something like hello name called, and we will append the name instead of the world here. And here in this case, the user's case, we will get the name from the user object, right, which is defined here. And this is pretty much all, right? So you have a set of plain old Java code, and now we need to make sure we create the web service out of this. Now, to create web services, CXF support what they call as front ends. And there are multiple front ends. One is called the simple front end. Other one is the JAX WS front end. JAX WS is a specification which makes things easier for you to convert a Java code, Java interfaces into web services. And that's what we are going to use here. But in the simple front end, without having to use annotations, you can just use a set of classes and so forth. And in that case, you can't deploy it in a Tomcat container like in a WAR file. So we will not use that method. In that case, you will have to have a main file, a main another class in which you will have a main, and you use a set of factory classes available in CXF, which will use reflection technology, right? Java reflection to look into what are the operations available and so forth. You will provide the interface name, implementation name there, and based on that, the CXF will make sure that it exposes the web service for you. But it uses Java reflection, which is somewhat a little slower. It has some performance issues, so it's not the best choice to create a web service. JAX-WS front end is much more suitable. And there are other ways as well, so we are not going to talk about this. I'll mention a few later. But to start off, let's use JAX-WS. To do JAX-WS based web service, initially we will have to define annotations here. So before we come to that, we'll have to have the relevant dependencies in our POM file, right? So what is our POM file for this? Okay, so we need to initially have a set of dependencies. So these dependencies I will just copy paste from the text file that I already have to save time. And you need to have these dependencies. You need to have Apache CXF with JAX-WS front end, This transport HTTP because we are using SOAP over HTTP. This is not needed to deploy it in WAR file, but when you run it in a standalone mode, that might be needed. So I'll just leave it. We will also have this Spring Web and Spring Context things, especially because uh, Apache CXF supports Spring-based configurations when it comes to defining various different properties, additional parameters, and so forth, right? So let's leave it. And JUnit is for testing, but we're not using that as well here in this case, but I'll just leave it there. In a real world project, you will have those things anyway. And then you also need to have to define a build property. We need to have a set of profiles where we have to find these Apache snapshots, right? Snapshots, and these are the repository locations to find out uh, the places where you can download it. Okay, so we'll have it here, and now we should be able to add the annotations. So we'll go to the interface first, and we will check on this web service annotation. Web service. Uh, okay, yeah. So web service, we need to use the Jakarta JWS annotation. It will automatically import that. And then going to the Hello World implementation as well. Here also you need to have the web service annotation added. That web service annotation, in fact, has multiple parameters that you can add. For example, it has a parameter called endpoint interface. You need to give your endpoint name there. In our case, it is our hello world interface name. So these will be used to generate your WSDL file. So the WSDL files will take these parameters as namespaces and service names and so forth, right? So we need to also have service name. It's not a must, but if you have those things, it will customize your uh, web service. And there are other parameters, other annotations that you can give as well. For example, you can have something called soap binding. In my case, soap binding, I'm going to have parameter style explaining it as, let's say, soap binding dot parameter style dot we'll use it wrapped. So by default it is anyway wrapped. So what is this parameter style is how your arguments such as these name and user arguments are passed, right? So in XML format, in SOAP XML format, when you're passing it, whether it will be wrapped inside an element or whether it will just hang on as its own elements. And by default it's wrapped, and it's better to use wrap. So we'll use it, and we'll see that example when we try it out. Okay, so done with it. And then finally, we'll go to this user object, the user parameter. And here we can say various things. For example, we can use XML. If you just type at XML, you will see various JAXB annotations. You see, these JAXB annotations. We will use XML root element, Jakarta XML bind annotations as well. So some are from that. And here the root element, I'm going to name it user, right? Or you can say my user, whatever. So let's keep it as user. And there are various other things now for even for these parameters, you can set names. So otherwise it will use default names that it picks, the runtime picks, right? We'll see those things. So I'll leave it as this. So with this, we are done. But now we have to make sure our, uh, we are using a web application, right? So we need to create that as part of let's say if I just go here, you have this web app directory. Under this web app directory, you need to have another directory called webinf. So I'll create that. And under the webinf, you need to create web.xml. This is for Tomcat deployment. And also we need to have another one, a file called CXF servlet.xml. So this will define the details. So we'll get to that now. For example, I'll start with CXX servlet and just copy paste from the place. So it's very simple now. You have some common schemas that makes it available for you to define various properties here. And here in this case, we are actually only using JAX-WS schema. And but usually you will also need to have other schemas to define various other properties. So by default, it's good to have all of those there. Um, right. And when you have, if you're building a JAX RS, a REST service later on, you will have the relevant schemas brought in here as well. So I haven't brought those things here. But anyhow, this is what you will have to have. And JAX WS server, for which you need to provide whatever ID that you like. The service class is, of course, your full name of your interface, including the package name, and then the address is your context, and then the service implementation class is your implementation class. Here in this case, I need to have the implementation, right? And the web XML file again uh, is very simple, and it defines the servlet. And here in this case, our servlet is uh, Apache CXF transport servlet. So usually when you are creating a servlet, you will write your own servlet, but we don't have to because we are using a framework, right? Apache CXF, which provides a servlet for us, and we have defined a mapping, and all of what this servlet serves is under the services, uh, you know, services context under whatever the project name. So this is all you need to have. And now with this, we should be able to build the project. So let's try to build it here. You can also build it from here, or even okay, I'll just build it here. Right. So now it is saying compilation error XML bad class. Okay, so why is that? So you in fact you don't really need that as well. So let's see. uh, this is fine. This is also okay. Compilation failure, bad class. Okay, so this seems to be the wrong version. Right, okay, let's try to build this thing in my command line first. I can't see what's wrong there, but let's see. So I'll just copy paste that, and so it won't make a big difference, but let's see. Okay, okay, it went on well, but now this time around I got, so this could be because in my uh, Eclipse I'm using a different version of Java. So forget it. We'll just here in this case I'm using Java Home JDK 9. So, but we need to see this one. So we need to have source version 7 or higher. For that, we need to add a build rule here. Uh, I should have this Apache Maven plugin uh, build definition. In fact, I forgot to add another thing as well, because we are building a a, a war file. We need to have the relevant plugins in place as well, right? Okay. Okay, we have a plugin which says my source and the target type. So that's cool. And then we also need to have another plugin under here. And here in this plugin, we will have the war plugin like this. So we need to have the war plugin added, which says where to find the web XML and so forth, right? So with this, we should be able to build it. And if everything goes on well, um, it should build the war file. Right, so it did build this time around. So if you go to the target folder, you will see the war file. So now with this war file, next thing that we need to do is we need to get to our Apache Tomcat 11 directory. Here you will have the bin and we need to start Apache Tomcat. But before that, I will show you this conf directory Tomcat users. You better add that thing with a user called Tomcat with a password, whatever that you choose, and add 2 roles in this manner, because we'll be using that to see what are being deployed. So I'll use Catalina. This is how you start Tomcat. So once you have Tomcat started, you should be able to go localhost 8080 and fine. So you see this one and the version that you are using. So if you want to go to manager app, and this is where you need that user, Tomcat. And you see a number of applications, number of servlets deployed. Some test ones that I've already done, I will undeploy those. And you see these set of applications. You see your manager, your host manager, and so forth, right? Okay, so now we need to bring our uh, build file here. So what I need to do is we just need to copy this war file into your Tomcat directory's web app. And once you copy there, let's look at that. You see, as you deploy the war file, it will unzip it and make it ready to serve whatever services that you expose in it. So if you just go back, uh, yeah, so now it is available. And if you just look into here, obviously this path is not available because we are using services, and then we are using hello world. And if I try WSDL, you'll be able to see the WSDL. And here you see our service, and we are using SOAP binding because we are exposing a web service from Apache CXF, and this is the URL of our web service, and you see the this binding is listed here. In that binding, you see our transport is HTTP, and we are using a binding style of document. And there's another style called RPC, which is little old school. You should not be using document style. Is the preferred style. And you see the three operations. They say hello user, and you see the input is literal and output is also literal. You can also have encoded input and encoded output, but unless you are too bothered about performance, you can leave it at literal so that you can see what's going on. Say hello user, say hello world, and say hello, right? And then these operations, it will say these are the incoming messages and outgoing messages. Messages define how what things are there underneath, right? So this port type will link to messages. Bindings, this service links to the bindings. The bindings links to the operations, the port types, right? And this port type links to the messages. And these messages now link to various schemas. Now, these schemas are what define uh, the input and output parameters. Now, here in this case, now see arg0 is the user, and the user and name is used underneath that, and this will be the wrapper element. You remember we used wrapped, and those wrapped element names can also be customized, but here in this case, for that you will have to use here. If I go into the implementation, here we used wrapped, and there are other parameters that say here what should be that wrapped element name. So there are some other arguments that you need to pass. We didn't do that thing purposely, so that's why it chose a default one here. And likewise in the say hello as well, right? Here you could have used Jaxby annotation uh, in your class files here. Just like this, you could have used Jaxby annotations here, specific annotations saying what should be the parameter name. Anyhow, that you get the story, right? So we'll copy this WSDL file, and I'll go here in the SOAPUI, and I'll use this and open it. So see, it will automatically read the three operations because the WSDL has those. And if I just go to say hello world and call it, you should get hello world. And that is expected. And say hello. You see the say hello has one parameter which says arg0. This you could have customized in your Jaxby annotations. Now here I'm going to say Mars. Hello Mars, right? And here I'm gonna say Venus, and here again you should get hello Venus. So that's it. It's pretty easy, right? So how to develop and deploy your web service in Tomcat. Okay, so now like what if you don't want to use Tomcat, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do next. I'm going to stop this Tomcat, and obviously in this case your WSDL won't be displayed, and we can close it off. So in that case, we are going to have a standalone uh, class, standalone server. So I'm going to name it server. And here in this class, we are going to have a very simple main method, which is going to be like this, right? And it will create a new server. We don't have any server definitions yet. So I'm going to create a definition like this. protected one. And here, let's say system out dot println starting the server. And then you need to have a set of factory methods given by Apache CXF to build a server in a standalone manner. So for that, first of all, we need to have, now we need to say which hello world implementation. So I will say implementer new element of new class of that. And then in Apache provides something called JAX-WS server factory. And we need to have, I will call it server factory and new WS server factory B. So this is what makes a new server. And we are going to use this one. And server factory bean dot, it has set service class. You need to provide your class name. What is your service class? In my case, it's hello world. And you have to say dot class. And then we also need to set our address. Set address, and I'm going to say this time around HTTP localhost. We'll put 9000 slash, I will make it a little different here, not hello underscore world, but hello world, right? And then if I, you need to also set the implementation. There you will say set service bean, which is the implementer, and then that's it. So we have to then server factory dot create. This is all you need to do, and now we can build this. But before building, we need to make sure we change this war to jar, because by default we are building, or else you don't have to put it as jar. You can just comment this thing out, right? Because by default Maven knows it needs to build a jar file. And then I don't need this plugin, but I need a separate plugin. We need a jar plugin instead of a war plugin, right? So I'll comment this thing out. And now we need to bring our plugin that says what is our main file. Where is our main file? Wrong place. Okay, I'm going to put it down here, something like this. Perfect. Now this is the war plugin, and Maven war plugin, and it says my main class is the server class, which I just built here. Okay, so with this we should be able to build our server from command line. Go back, and so let's clean it. We should have the target directory. Now we can say Maven install. Could have done it in one go, called Maven clean install, but I want to show you that target is no more there. So if I just go to target, now you see a jar file. So now going to the jar file, going into the target directory, let's try to run this. So let's say we could say, in fact, we have to say, we have to give our class file, let's say this, it says class not found. Okay, so obviously because we need to provide the class path, it doesn't understand where to find this server class. So for that we need to say class path, and we need to give our jar file here. Okay, and now if I run, it says class not found, and it doesn't find the JaxWS server factory bean, so which we used in our main, uh, the server class, right? So for this, you need to provide the class path for Apache CXF. So for that, I need to go back here, add my CXF jar to the class path like this, and separate it out. Okay, let's see. I need to also have the current directory. Uh, yeah, separate it out with colon. Semicolon is used in Windows. So server is ready and starting the server. So basically, if I go back, you see in the server, uh, I'm keeping it running for 5 minutes, because this, when you do it, it will create its own thread, right? And if you want to keep it running, you will have to do your Java magics here. So I will leave that thing for you. So then now we should be able to access our service from here. If I just go back and let's try to see our wisdom. Okay. It says not found. Why is that? Uh, okay, server ready. Something went wrong. No binding operation info while invoking unknown method with parameters. Okay, powered by Jetty, as you can see. Okay, all right, so there is something wrong. No binding operation info while invoking unknown method with parameters. Okay, okay, there's something wrong, which I need to test out why it is going wrong. Let's see. Okay, so for this, I actually did a small change here. We can also add this logging feature, and also I made the change, a little change. It's basically I had nothing other than this one. I don't know how that makes a difference, but after doing this, we should be able to add our server. So let's build it again. Maven clean install, and going back to our target directory, and then I should be able to use this one to run our server. And going back, hello world, if I say WSDL, you should be able to get the WSDL now. Now with this del is the same, right? Nothing different. Only difference is the endpoint, and you should be able to use this here just like you use this one. I'm gonna remove that and create a new one here, and it will bring out same thing. And if you call, you should be able to get hello world, and that's it. And you saw how to develop your uh, web service using Apache CXF and deploy a WAR file into Tomcat, and then we also created a standalone Jetty based web server, an embedded web server as well, using this technique. And there are various other things that you can do with CXF. You can enable, uh, SSL, TLS things. We'll see that in another video. You can also do advanced operations like adding interceptors. And there is also another way. Now here you are creating a visitor and you are using JAX-WS annotations, but sometimes you want to deal with the XML raw payload itself, and CXF provides support for that as well. And I recommend that you explore those options on creating. So that thing is called dispatch and provide interface in CXF, and look through that. And if possible, I'll make a video out of that as well. And enjoy making or creating web services. And even though SOAP is getting replaced from REST, I still see SOAP around, and so many of my friends and some of the customers that I work with, they still ask for SOAP support, and that's why I felt like creating a video on how to create Apache CXF based SOAP services. And we'll also see Axis 2 and a few other frameworks like Camel in future on how to create SOAP and REST services on those frameworks. And enjoy your day. Thank you very much for watching the video.